All right, so let's get into these 4 documents that you must have in place to properly build your legacy. The first document that we're gonna talk about is a will. Now, a lot of people think that, oh, I don't have an estate, I don't have, blah, 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 I don't really have like a big estate, so I don't need a will. Well, do you have kids? Do you have any property? Anything, all of your belongings. You gotta think about like, what do you want to happen to all of your belongings if you weren't here? Otherwise, guess what? The state decides. What if something happens to you? What's gonna happen to your kids? Like in our case, William is not Martin's biological child. So we have to have something legally in place so that if something happens to me, that Martin can continue to care for William. Sometimes there's some breakups and separations that don't go well. And you just think that, my kids could go to my parents or my sister or brother or whatever. But unless it's legally in place, that's not a given. It's not just, because that's what I wanted. You have to have it legally in written form. So the more that you can think about all these things that could happen, and the more that you plan and think out what you would want to happen, then you don't have to worry about it, okay? But you don't want these things to happen and then you don't have it in place and it's too late. So I'll tell you a story. My grandmother, she had quite a few properties, and my dad was gonna go to Arizona and was gonna live in Arizona where she was. She had this amazing home that was, a family home. It looked over the Sedona Mountains. I mean, gorgeous. It was like a museum. There was all this art. It was beautiful, right? So my dad was gonna go to Arizona. He was gonna live there, help her take care of. She had all these rental properties that were paid off and had rentals in them. So we talked about building wealth and we talked about cash flowing assets. Dude, she had all these properties paid off free and clear with renters, cash flowing. And then she also had some property like in Colorado, I think like 40 acres. And so everybody knew that she wanted everything to go to my dad. And we kept saying, she's gotta have this properly in writing. I know that her, me, my dad, the neighbors, everybody knew what her wishes were. Everything was going to my dad, right? And she just was kind of funny, like didn't want to deal with doctors or lawyers or financial stuff, right? She just kind of knew what she wanted. She wanted her wishes to be handled. She didn't put it in writing properly, okay? We kept talking about it. We've got to get this in place if to make sure that her wishes are carried out. So we finally got her to agree to talk to an estate attorney and put some of these things in place. We're gonna have her meet with an estate attorney. That weekend, she passed away. And the only thing she had was a 30-year-old will that had my dad as half of the beneficiary of her estate, and then some other family members that she didn't really have contact with, that she didn't really have any wishes for anything to go to them. But that was the only will that was in writing in place. And so that's what the court had to go with. And my dad had to go to the court and get awarded as executor of the estate to be able to go and handle all of these things. Well, guess what? That property that was supposed to stay in our family, the other family members who weren't supposed to have a say in anything, well, they wanted money. They wanted their money. They didn't want houses. They didn't want to split the houses. They wanted their money. So guess what? The family house that was supposed to stay in our family forever had to sell it. Rental properties, had to sell them. Property, had to sell it. Art, had to sell it. Everything had to be sold. And guess what? It took 4 years for my dad to sort through all of this stuff. He had to go back and forth from California, Arizona, totally completely stopped his business. He had a thriving business, and it took all of his attention, his resources, mentally, physically. I mean, it was exhausting. And now he would be retired and he would be in that home and it would be in our family. But because of that one little document that was not updated, everything is gone. Okay, they sold it, they got some money, but they had to split it all and all of that. So that's the power of having a will in place and keeping it up to date. Like if you get married, divorced, have kids, anything that changes in your life, you wanna make sure that you update. If you write somebody off, if you have a falling out with somebody and you don't want anything to go to them, then you could take them out of your will. Or if you have somebody come into your life, you can put them in your will. So these are things that, you know, most people don't really think about or want to think about, but it's so important, because if you really want your legacy to be carried out as you imagine it, then you've got to have it in place properly.